Hi guys, hope everyone's well and welcome back to the Improvement Podcast. In this episode today, I'm going to touch on why you're eating more calories than you think you are. And the reason being is a lot of individuals tend to think, oh, they need to eat extremely low calories to lose weight. Some people do, which is fair enough. But a lot of people will make some common errors regarding tracking calories and tracking their food as a whole. And I'm basically going to point out where you may be under tracking, where you may be messing up when it comes to your calorie tracking, unintentionally, of course. And the problem is it doesn't actually matter, you could say, if you are under tracking or over tracking, as long as it's consistent. Because if someone's, let's say, on X amount of calories and they're not losing weight, they just then need to know they eat less. The problem is when there's a lack of predictability with rate of loss due to a lack of accuracy with tracking, and also see when people under track, typically it comes from non-filling foods. When I see people under track their calories, they're not under tracking that half a bag of lettuce they've had. They're not under tracking foods like that. They're under tracking the mayonnaise they've had. They are under tracking the wee biscuit they had that they forgot to log, or the milk that they're accumulating and the sugar they're accumulating in their teas and coffees. The things that aren't going to contribute towards satiety and do contribute towards their calorie intake. So you want to be mindful of that, because that can just make your diet harder than it needs to be if you don't have that accuracy when you're tracking your nutrition. And in terms of the first point I'm going to touch on is when you're tracking, make sure you are weighing your foods out and not using something like a cup. A cup's an extremely broad measurement. If you, like, what size is a cup? You could have a big cup, you could have a small cup. You could have the cup as full as you possibly can, or it could be levelled off, or it could be slightly less than that. So it's an extremely broad measurement, and it's not that accurate as a result of that. So weigh your food. It takes an extra 5 seconds. It ensures you're accurate, and it will ensure you're setting yourself up for success when it comes to your tracking accuracy. And same with like a teaspoon. Like a teaspoon's a very broad metric. Like if you're like a teaspoon of peanut butter could be different depending on if you're peak bulk and you're not hungry versus at the back end of a dieting phase and your hunger's extremely high. Both on paper could be a teaspoon, but I guarantee you, if you try it, you could probably have like a teaspoon and maybe fit about 4 times as much as a level teaspoon if you wanted to. So that just shows like it is a very broad metric, and again, are you using the exact same teaspoon every time you're measuring it? So especially like you don't want to put your efforts to waste, so be accurate when you're tracking and weigh your food out instead of just using broad metrics like a cup, teaspoon, etc. to ensure you've got a predictable rate of loss at the end of every week. And some individuals also under track things or just don't track things full stop, which can be area where they kind of slip up. And what I mean by that is they do not track things like sauces, seasonings, wee bites to eat, which could be if you're trying some of your partner's dinner, or if you're eating something different than they are, of course. It could be like the sausage you're putting on meals and seasoning. So even things like when you, again, it depends. If it's consistent, you could argue you don't need to track it. Like, I don't track the seasoning I put on my chicken when I'm cooking it. However, it's always the same, and I repeat that every single week when I bulk cook my chicken. So don't necessarily. Well, saying that, I do somewhat track it because I weigh it out, but I don't enter it into my fitness pal. So it's still standardized, so I get a predictable rate of gain. And it is very small things like that, but they can add up. And same with like things like low calorie drinks, milks and sugars. So if you're having, let's say, a low calorie drink, 30 calories, you're having milk in your tea and coffee, which maybe adds up to another 10, 15. And maybe you're having sugar in that as well. Maybe you're having just some low salt and sugar ketchup, which accumulates another maybe, let's say, 20 calories here. And you're having some seasoning on certain meals, and then your dinner you have some hot sauce with it. and then you do have like a wee bite to eat from something on your partner's plate, that's probably like 150 calories you've just accumulated right there. And that across every day of the week can be the difference between being at maintenance or being in a deficit. And like I said, none of the things I've listed there are going to be that satiating, but they can add up. So be mindful of that there. And also, something to consider is inaccurate entries on MyFitnessPal or whatever other tracking app you use. So when you're tracking your nutrition, you can, on MyFitnessPal and other tracking apps as well, you can create your own MyFitnessPal readings or entries, which is great in a sense. It gives you flexibility and the ability to track a lot of different foods. It's got a massive database, which is valuable, so you can adhere to it and not fall off track when you're eating out at a restaurant, or you are maybe create something yourself so you can make your own reading, or if there's just not something on there, you can create your own entry of whatever you've bought from Aldi, Lidl, or whatever other place you shop. And the problem can lie is people can make their own readings but not actually put them in accurately. And what that actually then does is it means you'll log something and then maybe log it wrong or you'll eat something and then log it wrong. You could log it under or over, and causing you to overeat, undereat, etc. And skewing again your rate of gain if you're bulking, or rate of loss if you're dieting, leading to like a lack of success and predictability. So look out for, when you're tracking your food, look out for a tick on certain items if you're using MyFitnessPal, that is. And what that means is it's a verified food. It means MyFitnessPal or that's like verified it to be like, right, this is an accurate reading that you can trust. And that will just again mean you're not going to be tracking things incorrectly. And also, like, see when you're logging things and it's not got a verified tick, just use your initiative to double check it's accurate. What I mean by that is if you're having, let's say you're having something from MyFitnessPal and it's got 25 grams of protein, we know there's 4 calories in a gram of protein. So let's say that food that you've scanned has 25 grams of protein, let's say it's got 10 grams of carbs, a gram of fat, but it says it's 90 calories, then that's impossible, because in 25 grams of protein there's 100 calories alone. If it's got 10 grams of carbs, then that's 40 calories, so that's 140, and then there's 9 calories in a gram of fat, so that's 149 calories, but MyFitnessPal says it's 90. So there you can see again, that add up across multiple meals, multiple entries, can be unpredictable. And that's why it is good kind of eating the same foods, because even if you are tracking things wrong, it means you are tracking things wrong consistently. And with your weighing methods and cooking methods as well, what I recommend you do is weigh your foods raw. And the reason being, it's more accurate. When you are cooking certain foods, a lot of things will actually influence how much that food weighs. So for example, if you're cooking something like rice or chicken, the cooking duration matters. If you are cooking chicken and you absolutely cremate it in your air fryer, then that is going to make it a lot lighter in weight because it's going to lose its moisture. But then if you weigh the cooked chicken, you might actually be having more calories because you've got more raw weight chicken in that chicken because you've just cooked it more at that time. And same with like the amount of water you're using when it comes to things like rice. That can influence weight of the rice, same with how long you cook it for, so the overall cooking duration. So you want to make sure you're bearing that in mind when it comes to how you're or when you're weighing certain foods. And what you can also consider as well is food labels. So when we go to Aldi, Lidl, Asda, if you live in the US, whatever place you shop in the US, Walmart, let's say, I know in the UK there's an accuracy rate of round about 20% on food labels. So that means if you're having some sort of food and it's got 100 calories in it, there's 20% leeway. So it could be 120 calories, it could be 80 calories, which seems like nothing, like that's not a big deal. But if you expand that up across the meals for your day, then that means in like a 2,000 calorie diet, it could be anywhere from 1,600 calories or 2,400 calories. Obviously, that's me exaggerating things a touch, but there you can see that's a big difference. That could be the difference between, again, being in maintenance, a large surplus, or a large deficit, which is quite substantial. So it can add up over time. And also, see if you are, so that's why it's good not to drastically change your diet on a daily basis, because see if things are off, like I touched on earlier, if you are under tracking or over tracking certain foods like your rice, etc., it's the same, if that makes sense. Like if you're constantly having an extra 50 grams or 50 grams of carbs or 200 calories, let's say, but you're doing that every day, then it's the same, it's standardized. So even if your weight plateaus, you just know you need to eat less. The problem is where that's why I do favour a meal plan approach at times over if it fits your macros, because when you're eating a meal plan, you don't have that lack of consistency and lack of predictability with the rate of loss, because you're not having completely different foods on a daily basis, which will mean you might be over tracking, under tracking, because it's the same, and as a result you can then lose weight more effectively and be more likely to lose weight at the desired rate and reach your desired goal at the desired time frame. So there's more likely to have inaccuracies with the food labels when you're eating completely different foods. And also, see, when you're eating completely different foods on a daily basis, there's more likely a chance of things to go wrong when you're logging it, and you'll have inaccuracies take place. What I mean by that is, see, if you eat the exact same foods, all you need to do is repeat that. Whereas if you're maybe having completely different foods daily, you might forget to log a bit of butter here and there, or forget to log maybe what you put on with your chicken and rice or some sort of sauce, etc. Whereas if you're eating the same thing, there's more predictability and less likelihood of that happening. So yeah, because a lot of people will be like, oh, I'm on X amount of calories, and first of all, that's fine. Everyone's genetically different, and don't think there's an amount of calories you can or can't eat. There's because a lot of people will be like, oh, you should never eat under X amount of calories, but it's context dependent. If someone's a very small female, they're not super active, they've not got a lot of muscle, they're naturally going to have a low calorie maintenance. If someone's incredibly active, they weigh 100 plus kilos, and they work on a working site, then their calorie maintenance is going to be extremely high. So don't think that you can't dive below a arbitrary amount of calories. It all comes down to, how's your health? Like, see if someone's on what someone would class as too low in terms of their calorie intake, but their performance is flying, they feel great in terms of energy, their mood's in a good spot, they don't have any health issues or anything that indicates that they're eating too low food, then what's wrong with that? Nothing. You need to eat what you need to eat to lose weight. You can obviously do things that can increase your calorie maintenance and maybe have a higher protein intake, which will burn more calories in the process of digesting it, but you only have a certain amount of wiggle room in terms of manipulating your calorie consumption. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the episode. So a quick recap: make sure when you're tracking, you weigh your foods, do so accurately using a scale. Make sure you track everything and bear everything in mind, meaning sauces, seasonings, wee bites you have here and there, low calorie drinks if you're having a lot of them, milks and sugars, chewing gum, they all add up. As small as it sounds, it can create the difference of 100 plus calories on a daily basis. Make sure you're using accurate entries when you're logging foods on MyFitnessPal and other tracking apps. Make sure you're weighing things raw, because when you weigh things cooked, it can drastically impact the weight depending on the cooking duration, the water use, etc. And make sure you also try and keep some similarities in terms of the food choices you have on a daily basis, just because food labels have they've got a big margin when it comes to how inaccurate they can be, which can then influence your rate of loss. So hope you all enjoyed the episode. Any support is massively appreciated, and hope everyone has a great rest of their day.